Welcome to Bob Dylan Song by Song. Bob Dylan's Blues. That's an ambitious title. It's kind of a bold title, and that's because this is a bold song. Now, if you're familiar with the historic album this song is on, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, and the song itself, that intro might surprise you because it seems like such a fun, casual, almost little throwaway song. And in a way it is, but I also think it's really audacious. Remember that he's essentially a nobody at this point. He had one album of basically all covers, it didn't do much, and here he goes. He puts himself in the song title. He attacks the music industry or music industry genre, folk music, that he's trying to be a successful part of. He breaks character in the song. He stops and laughs. It all adds up to a statement. It seems like a statement about his confidence on where he's going. The song starts off with kind of a spoken word bit where he basically, like I said, attacks the music industry, talks about how this song wasn't written in Tin Pan Alley, essentially by, the music factories of the day. Actually, he starts off by assuming this mantle of authenticity and this authoritative air about what real folk music is, which again is pretty surprising considering where he's at in his career. The song starts with a really charming bit once the actual music begins. While the Lone Ranger and Tonto, they're riding down the line, fixing everybody's troubles, everybody except mine. Someone must have told him I was doing fine. The second stanza is just as much fun. It's interesting, he's kind of telling groupies to back off, as if he had any at this point. I don't know, maybe he did. So, as if he hasn't been cocky enough, now he's casting himself as this James Dean-like character, which, ironically enough, he was compared to in early articles about him. Here's a recreation of James Dean's car, or one of them, by the way, and I put that up because the next stanza, the third, is all about how, on the surface, about race cars or how he doesn't need to go see them, he doesn't want one, because, last line, quote, I can walk any time around the block. So now he's portrayed himself as a wanderer, which of course he's done throughout his career, and it's an old American roots music trope. And this is again adding to his kind of authoritative claims, right? Like he's the real deal. He's out seeing the country with his own 2 feet as the vehicle in question, kind of like Walt Whitman here, whose eyes you're looking into. And I think that's an American literary figure that Dylan is absolutely in the tradition of, as others have pointed out. One thing about this song in particular that made me think of him is, again, the boldness and the insertion of yourself into the narrative, which is what made Whitman's poetry stand out. On a deeper level, I think there's a lot of similarity in that they were both kind of obsessed with, what is the essence of America. Also, Dylan's music has always felt like it's as much about the 19th century or 19th century America as it is about the 20th. The great Gregory Peck, my mom loved Gregory Peck, he inducted Dylan into the Kennedy Center honors and said something absolutely incredible. Well, he name-checked Walt Whitman for one thing, but more to the point here, he said that the first time he heard Bob Dylan's music, which surely would have been this album here, that it immediately took him back to a childhood memory of watching Civil War soldiers, like actual Civil War veterans, playing music in a 4th of July parade. The very young Peck watching those soldiers, of course, never knew that there'd be a singer who would make him think about that decades later, and whom would later write about him even more decades later, inspired by a Western that he was in, which you just saw the poster of. Anyway, the song picks back up on the wandering theme immediately after the last line that we did, because the fourth stanza, which is a lot of fun, like the rest of the song, says, well, the wind keeps a-blowing me down the street with my hat in my hand and my boots on my feet. It's so much fun that this is the part where Dylan kind of breaks down and laughs a little bit. Well, the last stanza then takes us full circle and comes back to westerns. Here's Dylan in a western, by the way. I talk about symmetry so much with Dylan's lyrics, and there's many different ways in which he uses it. This is one. We started with the Wild West, right? Lone Ranger and Tonto. There was really nothing else like that, not particularly in the meat of the song, right? The meat of the sandwich. But now you kind of know the song's going to end because he's back to it, as he portrays himself this time as a gunslinger, an outlaw. And that is, in my humble opinion, a metaphor for the freedom he's portraying in this song, how free he is of all the typical constraints. Remember, this song has this real daring, maybe tongue-in-cheek, but maybe not air. So he's so confident here at the end in the final stanza, he assumes, happily, that you want to be like him. And he cranks the authoritative air up to 11 when he basically authorizes you to go rob banks, sticking with the Western metaphor. And final line, quote-unquote, tell the judge, I said it was all right. This phase of Dylan's career is remembered for the anthemic songs, the protest songs, beautiful love songs, but he has an amazing amount of fun, and I think that's why the album is called The Freewheelin'. He creates kind of this impish musical character for himself, and it's just dripping with attitude. You can see that throughout this album, which again is not necessarily what it's remembered for. And if I recall correctly, that's what George Harrison said impressed he and the Beatles so much about this record originally. He said they just listened to it over and over again, and it was more than anything else the attitude of it. This song would be a great example of that, and this video has now gone more than twice as long as the song itself. Thanks.